Hey, before you get started, make sure your fingers are warmed up. Make sure you're doing some sort of scale, some sort of finger exercises. Always, especially when you're learning Rush songs or a lot of complicated stuff that's either fast or, you know, whatever it is. Actually, really for any song, just to be honest with you. You want to make sure your fingers are warmed up. Check out my guitar finger gymnastics. I have a link below. I've got a series of exercises and different techniques you can use to get your finger strength, coordination, and dexterity even better than it is now. And no matter whether you're a beginner or you're advanced. So go ahead and click that link, check that out, and let's get on with the video. Hey, how you doing? This is Tony from 6 String Corner, and today I'm going to show you how to play Spirit Radio using my Kemper Profiler, and I also have a Fractal FX8 Mark II for my effects. So I'll go through what the pedals are that I use, and I'll go through what my setup is here on the Kemper. Now, let's do some qualifiers. First of all, it's very, very difficult, in my opinion, to match what Alex Lifeson's true tone, his sound was. I know some people claim that they can get it. Some come really close. I'm in a Rush tribute band, and part of my job is to try and get close to it, but I have found that there are songs that are you kind of have to make compromises in order to achieve the same result. Also, you are not Alex, so you're going to have a different way that you play. You're going to have a different guitar that you're probably going to be using. That's what I am going to be using, a different guitar than what he would have used on that record and in subsequent tours. So you have to adjust for that sound. So just using exactly what he uses, man, that could be a slippery slope. You might get it, you might not. I've achieved it sometimes on some songs, sometimes I haven't. So this is what I use for Spirit of Radio. For the Kemper Profiler, I'm using the Marshall Silver Jubilee from Michael Britt's profile pack. Now I know Alex used high watts primarily off that Permanent Waves album and that tour. It's a special one that he used. I think it's a DR105, I want to say. I can't remember the exact number. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. I probably am. But I know it was modded up and it was changed up. I have found that the high watts that I have seen in the Rig Manager and the high watts that I've seen in profiles checking them out, I haven't really found anything that really I felt nailed it just yet. I'm still got the search going on, and if anybody out there knows of one, or you can send me a link or tell me which one you thought was really close to what he got, I'm very interested in checking this out. Because to be honest with you, I've gone through a couple of different amps over the past year with this song and a bunch of the other songs too that I play in the tribute band. This right now is where I landed. I landed on the Marshall Silver Jubilee. Marshall's a safe one for me. He used Marshalls before. He did use Marshalls later on after that album, but you know, it works for me on this one. So the Mars Silver 1.7 to be precise is the number that I use. It's pretty stock. I didn't make a lot of changes to what was on the profile that came to me. I kept the same cabinet. I also went with the gain pretty much where it was sitting at, just a little bit under 12 o'clock. I did add a bit more mid and treble to cut through. It seemed to work better for me, and I believe Alex did tend to do some of that as far as boosting mids and trebles here just to cut through the mix a little bit, but it works for me when I play. The brig volumes at standard center. I didn't really do much in the amplifier section, except what I did do is I changed the definition. I like the definition on a lot of my sounds to be around 7. So that's where I put the definition at. Everything else I left the same, so I didn't touch it. The input section is the same, output section hasn't changed. So there's nothing special that I did there. I do have an effects loop. I am using the reverb that is on the Kemper. No, actually on this one I'm not. So sometimes I do. All right, this is what I do. And this is the advantage I have of having these two set up. Sometimes on the Kemper I do use the reverb. Sometimes on the Fractal I use the reverb. There's different types that I'm after. So, you know, sometimes it makes it match them a little bit. So sometimes I'll have this reverb on, sometimes I won't. I also will use the wah effect on the Kemper. I'm still thinking it's a work in progress for me. I'm still not 100% satisfied with it. I've been tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it. I'm still working on it. So eventually I'll arrive there. I do prefer the wah sound on the Kemper over the Fractal. So that's what I use for the Kemper Profiler. I do use the 4-cable method that connects to my Fractal FX8. Now on the Fractal, this will be interesting for those of you who may not have the Fractal. You may have individual pedals or something like that. So hopefully this will be a help to you to give you an idea of how to set it up. Two things that I want to definitely point out. One is the chorus, which Alex really was known for quite a bit back in those days. For many albums, that chorus effect was used. He had a CE1. I know he used Dimension D. There were different effects that he used. What I used on the Fractal is a CE2. They call it Japan CE2. I don't know why they call it Japan. Again, if y'all know why, let me know. But I use a standard CE2. That's what I used back in the 80s when I used to play guitar a lot. I had a Boss Chorus CE2. I use that. I set the rate and the depth accordingly to get the right kind of sound. So you'll want to tweak yours if you have that chorus effect. Also, I use the Flanger. It's just a standard analog mono. Now, to clarify, I use an electric Mistress. On my Fractal, I haven't found anything else that really comes close to that sound, so I try to get it best I can with the Flanger effect. I do run the flange post as opposed to ahead of the amp. That's just where I like to have it. Whether he did that, I have no idea. It doesn't matter. It works for me. For the overdrives, I use the micro boost for my initial, just for the obvious boost that I have for the solo, and also for the intro part. And I use a standard Ibanez Tube Screamer. On the Fractal, this thing is called the T808OD, but it's basically the Tube Screamer. It works for me. I've liked using the Tube Screamer a lot. I know Alex used most likely the MXR Distortion Plus back then. I'm pretty sure that's what he used on this song, but to me, I think you kind of need that high watt to get that right tone. I haven't been able to get a good mix. I mean, you can definitely use it with the Marshall. It's just not setting well with me. So I decided to stick with my old tried and true Tube Screamer. I like the overdrive and just crank the gain a little bit. That's what works for me. You may have a different idea, and I'm always tweaking. So y'all come up with better ideas. You gotta let me know. Put something in the comment section. And also, I just use standard, just a little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb, like I said earlier, just to kind of beef up the sound a little bit. The delay I only put really on the solo. But that chorus and the flange, when the flange is going, the chorus and the flange do run together. So try to time those, try to sync those things up. You can do that on the Fractal if you know the tempo, or you can get guests on the tempo, and then that's what I use. So I'm gonna clean up the sound a little bit so you guys can hear what I'm doing. So I've turned all the effects off. And I've gone over that earlier, so this is just basically how to play the song. Now we're just using a very straight sound. Alright, so the beginning is pretty cool. It's a classic, lots of pull-offs and where we're playing over here in the second position. So what you're going to do is you're just picking between the first and second strings, and I'm going to play this really, really, really super slow. You notice there's a little double pull-off. So what I'm doing is I'm basically keeping that pick in between the first and second string and just kind of alternating as I play the different notes. That's down, up. So every time I hit the E string, I'm picking down. Every time I hit the B string, which is really just that one note, I'm picking up. Just keeping my fingers in between those two strings. This riff goes really, really super fast, so you're going to want to do everything you can technique-wise to allow yourself to play that fast. So the less you have to move this hand outside those strings, the better it'll be for you in order to actually accomplish it and make it sound really cool. This part is just a riff here that's using the second and fourth frets on the D string and the A string. Sometimes I slide it, but there's times also when I'm playing this song really super fast, I might actually get a little lazy and it sounds fine. I'll do a hammer on it. So it's just the fourth, the second frets, and then the open string. Open A, and then you come to the next part of the song. Next part here is just playing a little tiny chromatic run on the second, third, and fourth frets on the E string. So open E. Alright, I'm going second, third, and fourth fret on that open E. Alright, notice on that's A. Open A, second fret, third fret, and then you're going to hammer on to the fourth fret. And then pick this E note, second fret on the D string. part of the song is these chords are played throughout. There's just different times he plays it differently. Different times he does different arpeggios or different chords, but it's pretty much the same thing. It uses an E major, a B major. This here is called an E over G sharp. This is also called an E over G sharp, and you're going to see both versions. I'm going to go over that in just a second. And then an A major. Now, in the beginning of the song, in the early parts of the verse, he's using that open B and the open E strings. So we're just going to play this E power chord. And you just ding, ding. And you play the open E and the open B after you play the chord. So it's just like playing an E power chord with the low E string. And then this here is like a B major, except the same thing. I'm not going to bar it. I'm going to bring my hand out so that I have an open B and open E. But the rest of the chord is still formed like this. It's the same thing. And then third string. Now this one here is E over G sharp. You can play this one of two ways. I like playing with my little finger right here on the 4th fret, my ring finger here on the G string on the 3rd fret, pointer finger on the D string on the 2nd fret, and then I bring my middle finger up here on the 4th fret on the low E string, and I have that finger also mute the A because you don't want to play that A string. That's how I like to play it. Another way you can play, which might be easier for you, it's just not how I do it, I like things hard, right? Is you can play this with the open E, which would make it really consistent with what you're doing in the song anyway. So either one of these, or you can play them like this. So it's the same notes, I'm just putting my ring finger right here, muting that A string. The pointer finger's over here on the 2nd fret D string, and then I'm putting the little finger here on the 4th fret G string, and then open B, open E. And then it's an A major bar chord, and then another B major bar chord. So that's how it's played in essence, the song. So you just gotta make sure that ding ding ding, gotta make sure you got that thing going on in there in the first part. The second time around, it's the same thing, except he doesn't use the open strings. Is now he's using a full out E major bar chord. So that I did on the 3rd and 2nd strings, performing this E major bar chord. And then a full out B major bar chord. All right, and I'm just on the upper, the first 2 strings, but it's barred now. And then when I play this next one, this is an E over G sharp. Basically what you got to do is you got to bar the whole 4th fret with your pointer finger. Little finger right here on the 7th fret A string, a ring finger on the 6th fret on the D string. Barred G string right here is going to be heard, so you got to hear it. And then the middle finger is on the, the 5th fret on the B string, and still using the open E. You're going to hear all 6 strings, so you really got to bend that wrist and get those fingers out. All right, and the way I pick that is the same thing. I'm just going a little. He's on the B and the E string. And then, like before, you have the A and the B major in there. All right, so that's the second time around through the verse. All right, now note that there's a lot of times when he returns to certain sections. You're going to come back to this a lot. And there's a lot of, and so you're going to come back to that a lot. And that basically is it. Those chords are what's played quite a bit. And then the intro section comes back quite a bit too. So those are definitely sections to learn. Now, the bridge section, or getting into the bridge, is where it gets a little complicated. So what you're doing here is an E sus chord. So you are barring with your pointer finger on 5 of the strings on the 7th fret, and you're going to bring your ring and your pointer finger up here like you're going to play an E major. You're going to play an E power chord, but you have to bar these, the E and the B string, with the pointer finger. Alright, that's an E sus chord, and then you're going to go play a D, and then take that D shape and go up 2 frets, and then back down to D, and then you're back to this E sus chord. And then you're going to drop, you can take the exact same form, you're going to drop down 2 frets to the D. It's like a D sus chord. Notice there's that one dun dun and one extra strum there on that D before you go back to the song. So there's this really quick riff where it's you're playing this first. All right, and then you got to play this. Woo! It's quite a bit there. So let me give you a close up on the left hand first. On the right hand, what I'm doing is just picking each note one time, except for that very first one, it's picked 3 times. So the very first note, which is actually a D note here, that's on the G string here, way up on the 7th fret. Alternating picking, so wherever you can get an alternate picking, making you move a lot faster through this piece. So it's almost all alternate picked in there. That's probably the best way to fly through that piece because it does go quick. And if you're playing with a bass player and the drums, you got to be in sync with that. So hey, good luck with that. That's a really tough part to play. And then they come back to this part. Now the words on the prophets were written on the symphony wall. That's just using a basic E major bar chord, an A major bar chord, and a B major bar chord. Now live, he even talks about this, and I do it too. I play it all kinds of different ways. I don't do it exactly the way you hear it on the studio recording. So I'm just picking between the low parts of that chord. All right, that's the general gist of how you want to play that. But there are different variations of that that are played that he's done. Check a lot of the bootleg stuff on YouTube. Listen to his live versions. Sometimes he'll go, or he'll do a reggae or ska thing. You know, I'll do a lot of that, but you can find something to have a lot of fun with that if you're trying to figure out how to play that live. But it's simply just the 3 bar chords. That's all you are, and then you can do different variations of that and how you want to pick it. All right, now for the solo is played up here in... That solo is played right here. So the first part's played on the B string. So using that pointer finger to kind of give it a little B. Alright, you're pushing up in that string, giving it a little bit of a bend. Pretty cool effect. And then, you know, you end up on this A note here, which is on the 14th fret on the G string. Big thing that I like to talk about is how you grip in the neck. I find that stuff like this is a lot easier when you're grabbing the neck and not playing it like this. It's a lot more strain on the wrist and on the thumb, so you probably want to try and do a grip here. And when you're playing this, a little bit of wrist twist there to get that vibrato and those bends. And then he just does a little bend here on the B string to the E string. So just bending that B string here on the 15th fret. All right, and then you're ending on the 12th fret there on the E string. And then this bend section is really kind of, I don't know, it's kind of sloppy, but it's kind of intended to be that way, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but you're bending these two, the 15th fret on the E and the B string. It's just this really ugly sound that there's no perfection to it. You're just trying to bend it and just try to make it sound kind of chaotic. And then you take your vibrato bar, which you're going to need on this one, and then after you do the bend, open string, and then I like to take this harmonic. Sometimes I've heard him do this where he takes this harmonic on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th string way up here on the 7th fret, coming back up. So open, just works for me. Don't have to do it, you can just bring it up, but I like having that little harmonic thing going on. So you just harmonic with your ring finger, but you're gonna bend it up. And we got that distortion, you got that wah-wah going, and that's just a really cool effect. And then you just take these 2 fingers here, shaped like this, with a pointer finger on the G string on the 7th fret, and the ring finger on the 9th fret on the D string. And it's just you're just sliding back and forth on that, and then up here, then you take that exact same form with the pointer finger on the 12th fret, ring finger on the 14, the same thing here. And then there's this pull-off thing. All right, well, the notes I'm using is a pointer finger on the 12th, the little finger is on the 15th fret, E string, and then the ring finger is on the 15th fret on the B string. And then he just bends the off the 17th fret, which is this E note on the B string. And that ends the solo.